Welcome to Inside the Outcomes, a rehabilitation research podcast. In this episode, we're examining the challenges people with disabilities face when it comes to air travel. You'll hear about a nonprofit that began right here at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, founded by a former patient who turned a frustrating experience into a mission to make travel, transportation, and tourism more accessible for all. Joining me are two guests with powerful perspectives. Mike Whelan is a longtime advisor to several Shirley Ryan Ability Lab spinal cord injury research advisory councils. Over the course of his career in energy and research development, Mike logged over 1 million miles in the air, traveling the world with his manual wheelchair. We're also joined by Eric Lipp, Executive Director of the Open Doors organization. Eric founded ODO back in 2000, shortly after his own rehabilitation at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. The inspiration, being unable to enter a bakery just blocks away from the hospital. Today, his organization trains transportation staff, leads accessibility advocacy, and collaborates on a research project with Shirley Ryan Ability Lab and Indiana University to improve air travel for people with disabilities, supported by our very own researchers. Welcome to the podcast, Mike and Eric. Mike, you've been on the podcast before to talk about your experiences with inpatient rehabilitation after spinal cord injury. But since I've had you on, I learned that you are, in fact, a million miler. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experiences with air travel?
Sure. You mentioned career in energy research and development, and those were with organizations that were basically consortia groups. And in consortia, you have to meet with a lot of people with different interests who are in different locations. So we had a lot of meetings with contractors, a lot of committee meetings, a lot of conferences. And then for about a dozen years, I would travel about every other week to our main offices in suburban Virginia. So I logged a lot of miles over a lot of years to a lot of different places around the country. Um, and the experience with flying, the good, bad, and indifferent, first of all, you have to sort of separate yourself. I should say separate yourself. You have to realize that you are in the pool of travelers. And all air travelers face all kinds of varying amounts of grief and variance and uncertain outcomes every day. So when we speak about handicap travel, it's important to separate what everyone's sometimes disappointing experiences from what's unique to the handicap situation. So having done that, it's important to me to see how over the years the system became, I think, more structured, more systematic with regard to handling the individual traveler and the needs to get on and off the airplane. And that's really what much of it is, in my experience, at least, traveling with a manual wheelchair is can they get me on and off the airplane quickly and efficiently? And of course, at the end of the flight, will that wheelchair reappear in an undamaged condition at the gate so I can head off to my destination?
Have you ever had an experience where the wheelchair was damaged or didn't arrive, and what was that like?
I did. I had a couple of distinct situations. One where the wheelchair arrived kind of crushed in half, and we had it was a very difficult remainder of the trip to figure out what to do and how it could still function for me. Another time where the wheelchair didn't arrive at all, and that was a trip to Italy, a one stop through Rome to Milan. And the wheelchair got off in Rome, but I got off in Milan. And it was about 16 hours later when the wheelchair finally showed up in Milan. And in the meantime, I was in the Italian version of an aisle chair, which is quite a bit different than the U.S. version of an aisle chair. And it was kind of funny because the people at the airport in Milan were very concerned that I wasn't going to return their aisle chair, but I assured them I would be no more than 1 foot away from their aisle chair at all times.
I was going to say, what is it like when you arrive somewhere and the wheelchair isn't there or it's damaged, or maybe people who are assisting you in getting on and off the plane don't know how to manage those tasks? What is that like?
Well, the initial moment, of course, is assessment. Okay, what do we have here? Is it recoverable? What are the immediate options? And usually, the people, which is the flight crew initially, and then the handlers from the air side or from the airport side, they're all kind of either looking at their shoes or looking up at the ceiling, and because they don't know what to do, and it needs some gate agent or some other individual with other authority to assess the situation and start to make some decisions.
Eric, you're the founder of Open Doors organization. Can you tell us a little bit about how and why the organization was founded and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. And Mike, I feel ya. I too have had multiple times where my scooter hasn't arrived at my destination and I'm there and just like, hey, what's going on here? Good thing is there is some relief on the way. One of the things I started, what happened when I was at Shirley Ryan, I had a disability. And when I got out of the hospital, I was using a manual wheelchair and I changed over to a scooter because I work in airports a lot and they're huge structures and I wanted to be a little quicker. So I changed over to a scooter. But well, early on, I had to go back to work right after I got out of the hospital, and I couldn't fly to Alabama without them carrying me off the aircraft. And that was a little rough on me. So that's really what the big impetus for me founding Open Doors was to make goods and services accessible to people with disabilities in travel, tourism, and transportation. A bunch of years ago, we did an access guide for the city of Chicago, easyaccesschicago.org. And so the impetus for that was is that I had trouble just in our own city, right on the hospital campus, getting into one of the restaurants there and discouraged me from ever going out. So I founded Open Doors to make it easier for people to travel, to get out of the house, to show our consumerism and to, have some equity in life in travel and tourism, which turned out to be a lot more complex than I thought. When I founded Open Doors in 2000, I wasn't really sure where things would be. And as it turned out, things were really far behind. Good news, like for Mike, is that uh, in 2004, we started developing tags just for wheelchairs so that airlines knew what kind of wheelchair it was, and they were tagged at least so we could track it somewhat. But now that tagging has gotten so advanced that wheelchairs and scooters, other assistive devices, they get like bag tags on them and they get scanned. So on your phone, you can see that your assistive device, like I was in LA recently with my son and they couldn't find my scooter. But because the app scans my tag, that airline was able to show me that my actual scooter was there. It was at the airport. And I was like, it's here. I can see it's here. You guys should see it's here. Somebody go find it. But oftentimes, like Mike said, people are staring at their shoes or up at the ceiling. And, we really want something done. I just want them to go get my scooter because, I like Mike when I arrive somewhere and it's not there or if I'm on vacation with my family. Ground handlers, up until we started training them, they didn't realize it's a domino effect. Like, just if my scooter comes up late, say it comes up late and it takes me an extra hour to get out of the airplane, what if I miss my accessible transportation then? They're not going to wait around for me and then I'm stuck. So I'm worried about all these things going into it. And it opened doors. And with this project with Shirley Ryan, what we're trying to do is bring the human side to each device because overall in aviation, we don't damage that incredibly many devices. You wouldn't believe it, as many as we carry. The rate's 1%, a little over 1.5, maybe. But what we try to bring is that's like, that's human. Those are humans that we're damaging here. Those are human body parts and things like that. And I think that's what's making the difference now is that airlines are starting to see the human side of, like I said, what can go wrong if my chair comes up late or damaged or it can ruin everything and it ruins it for your family and your loved ones. And your friends. It's just really tough on us. It's a lot of pressure, right, to fly like that.
So I know that Open Doors organization provides training to airport and other travel and tourism staff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we represent maybe 60 some odd carriers and same amount of airports around the world. And that's what we're really doing is bringing training, by the people for the people. So we have trainers with disabilities out there doing this. We're a disability rights advocacy group, but we don't necessarily chain ourselves to the doors. We pretty much try to go in with the employees through the employee entrance. And we've been able to get in with a lot of, big companies and these large airlines across the world, and really training them. We train them on a lot of policy procedure and on the legal stuff. But to me, the essence of what we do is the human stuff. I mean, I'm 25 years into my disability, like almost to the day. And I was in Shirley Ryan, and I just remember all the stories of all the different people and their backgrounds. And for me, it was a traumatic time in my life, but it was also a little bit like summer camp because I was hanging out with a bunch of cool people and we were all trying to get better and all this stuff. And I use those stories to this day. So I think bringing the human aspect is the most important thing of what we do. So things like proper language and good design, because we believe that proper language and good design drive accessibility in travel and tourism.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by language and design?
Yeah, so language is really important. For instance, my kids never knew that when we drove into a parking lot, they never said, "Dad, go get the handicap spot," because we didn't use that word in our house. So my kids always knew that we're looking for accessible, and they learned what accessible meant. And it meant that they don't understand what handicap is and what people are talking about. My son thought it was because of my golf handicap, because of how many, he had no idea. All they care about is accessibility. They learned at a young age that access was the important thing, not something handicap. So it's always been the accessible parking space, because if you find the accessible parking space, that gives us access, meaning them. That gives them access to whatever they want. But if there's no parking there and there's no, they know it could make it so we don't do that. We don't travel or we don't go to that place. The design part of the question is really important to understand, because the world is not really designed for equality for us, whether it's deaf, hard of hearing, blind, low vision, or mobility. Design is so important. And I'll give you my example here is a doorknob. A doorknob is just a round circular thing that isn't exactly stylish or pretty, and nobody is like dying to put doorknobs in their home these days, right? And we even call each other, maybe you're a doorknob, as a negative connotation into it. And when you look at the design of a doorknob, it's not conducive to people. You can't operate it with a closed fist. Then you look at levers and handles. Like in my hotel room here, there's no doorknobs. Why are we still producing doorknobs then? That is design that people don't understand. We don't need that anymore. We've got a better one. It's better looking. You can leave doorknob could be out of our vocabulary. It could be gone like Blockbuster Video, right? Doorknob should be gone, but they're not accessible. So when you walk into a place, whether there you have a doorknob or a handle, a lever. So things like design ramps versus stairs. If you put ramp next to stairs, no matter where you are in the world, people are always going up the ramp and not the stairs. Able-bodied, disabled people, everybody's going up the ramp. So why aren't we ramping the world, more? And we are places like Japan and some in the Middle East, they're building a lot more accessibility into their new stuff. So that's my language and design. If you understand the language and you can speak the language and you understand, that we're not handicapped and things like that, that access is what's important. And then knowing what access is included, meaning things like ramps and things like automatic doors, then that, those two things really drive it. If you understand those two, it becomes part of your business model.
I say after a conversation of the other day in preparation for this, looking through Eric's websites, his organization's Open Door, and then it quickly went to the Global Repair Group. I was not aware at all of the tremendous resource that Global Repair Group is for equipment repair. If you have an incident or a situation with an airline or really any kind of common carrier, that's a tremendous resource to get somebody on your case ASAP and get repairs done professionally and quickly, that would be near impossible, I think, as an individual kind of trying to swim upstream through that system. So all credit to Eric and his group for pulling that together. It's really a fascinating and I think extremely effective organization he's built.
Global Repair Group, which is Mike is referring to, is an entity that we started at Open Doors through our social entrepreneurship program, which is really by the people for the people. And we realized my scooter was damaged, and I realized what you had to go through, and I ended up just getting a check. And I didn't really want a new scooter. I really just wanted mine fixed quickly. And I went home and fixed it myself, and I got a check from the airline. And so I took it back to them and I said, this isn't working. You're doing something wrong here. And we realized that airlines weren't even counting how much they damaged. There was no system. They're all in place. And every station would handle it differently because most people wanted to use their guy in their city to help them out. So the airlines had no place to turn. So the local station was always responsible for it. So nobody knew how much was getting broken or how it was getting broken. And what we did was we gave a one-stop shop. The airlines asked us to do that. And I put together a business plan with another guy, Michael Blywaz, and we started Global Repair Group to make it so that the airlines, they know how to fly airplanes. They don't know what to do if your chair gets damaged. They don't know how to fix that. They don't know how to do any of that. So we take that away from them right away. And make no mistake about it, it is very by the people for the people, because that's why we started Global Repair Group, because we don't want anybody else handling the damage other than somebody else who understands disability and accessibility. So, that was the real impetus for it. And, we can assess damage over the phone. The idea is to get your device back to you as quick as possible. And we do that by working with, the hospital and your fix-it guys and lots of DMEs. And it's really turned into an incredible business. And we get compliments on it all the time, but I really did it honestly because I was self-serving, because my scooter got damaged and I couldn't stand how long it was taking to get it fixed. And I travel for work and I'm like, you guys, I can't even come do work for you because you broke it.
Eric, could you give kind of an example of a typical week for Open Doors organization? I know you do tons and tons of training all around the world. What's a week like for you?
So, like right now, I am working with an airline and testing some new seats, and access to new accessibility, getting in and out of new first class seats, and new devices to help do that without hurting anybody. So I'm doing that as well as doing some training here with ground handlers at DFW. So I'll spend a couple of days that, and then go back in the office. I try to be in the office a couple of days a week, either Mondays and Fridays. And we'll work on anything from right now. We're doing a lot of training and quoting for a lot of carriers internationally because of the new regulations coming into place. So I know I have meetings with. We have some new airlines coming on board. We have meetings with airlines from everywhere from Saudi Arabia to Western Africa. So we'll be working on that, and then we do a lot with Amtrak. So we'll do anywhere from 5 to 50 trainings a month in 22 cities for Amtrak frontline employees, and almost all of those have a trainer with a disability, and so that's time consuming, and we're working really hard on that this summer to get a lot of new hires trained at Amtrak. And then always working on statistics. Our market study is really important. So we're still trying to get new releases on it, more information out to people so that businesses have the money case to make changes. And that's what our Harris polls do. We've done 5 Harris polls since 2002. So we've been trending travel and tourism for a lot of years. And if you Google Open Doors organization, you see a lot of articles based on our travel numbers and statistics. So that's kind of a typical week. A few days in the office, a few days on the road somewhere, usually doing something fun. Everything we do is fun. I haven't had a lot of no fun in a long time. And we're also processing paperwork for 5 airlines: Alaska, JetBlue, Allegiant, Sun Country, and British Airways. If you're traveling with a service animal, we've streamlined it so you only have to fill out the paperwork one time and never again. So if you're flying on any of those airlines, you have a service animal. It's super helpful, and it'll help. It's easier to fly on those airlines I mentioned because once you're clear on one, you're clear on all of them. That's my typical day.
That's a busy day.
Yes.
Well, I wanna wrap up a little bit with a new project that Eric, you're advising on, and it's a project out of Indiana University, led by Dr. Shu Cole, and researchers here at Shirley Ryan Ability Lab are also participating in this study to improve air travel for people with physical disabilities. Can you talk a little bit about your role in the project?
Yeah, so the project's really cool because we're working on, how people are being trained and what kind of resources they need to get better trained because we know through our work that training is lacking and it's hard to get done on a scale that's as big as an airline with a million cities and all of that stuff. So we're going to be looking at all that. It's funded by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation. Yeah, NIDLR in the disability community. But this is a really important one because I think we're going to be able to really understand more about what happens at the airport, including with the wheelchair service providers, which remains the number one complaint amongst all travelers with disabilities is the wheelchair service providers. And so we're going to take an in-depth look on how that works and how that works within aviation. And Open Doors, our main job is to represent the community, make sure that we have outreach. Um, and make sure that we brought in a group like Shirley Ryan, who also understands the community and in the outreach and what goes on there. So to me, it's like a dream team. And we're really, automatically that if you have Shirley Ryan and Open Doors, the community is going to be heard. So we know that we're definitely at the table. And I think that's what's really important too. And I think that's what our big job was, is to bring in a lot of people with disabilities and keep it real, because we want to hear from the people, not from the rest of the world. We want to hear from the people.
It's one thing, my perspective, of course, is a guy traveling with a manual wheelchair, but there are all kinds of other people with various impairments and impediments who I never think about. People with vision issues, people with hearing issues, and the need to train airport staff, anybody in the whole chain of contact from TSA all the way down to accommodate those people is just an enormous undertaking. So again, credit to Eric and his organization for trying to do something about all that and really make it a better experience for the wider population.
Thanks. I want to add the TSA it's very complex there. And we actually have a people with disabilities working group that I'm the co-chair of. And I'm also was a member of the ASAC, the Aviation Security Advisory Committee, which kind of oversees the TSA. We have 25 initiatives that we are working on to create a better experience for people with disabilities at the checkpoints. I'll mention one right away that everybody can look out for. You got this phone number. It's called 1-800 TSA CARES, CARES. You can call that, and you can call that anytime. And if you're traveling, you can set up with them a meet and greet and go through security without anybody knowing it. And you can they'll do whatever you need if you call TSA Cares to get it prepared ahead of time for you to travel. So that's something that's really cool. And then at every checkpoint, there's a new person with a yellow band on their arm. And that yellow band means they're a PSS, Passenger Service Specialist, and they've been specially trained. They go through a training that was developed by the disability community because there's an advisory board on disability, and we've developed that training that those people go through. And so if you're feeling like you're being discriminated against at a checkpoint, you can always ask to see the PSS. and that person can come over. You can point them out even. You can say, oh, that person with the band, they're a PSS. Could you have them come over? And that's a really valuable tool for people with disabilities, especially getting through security. And, we all have complex chairs or medical devices, anything from like baclofen pumps, things like that, leg bags. Uh, all that kind of stuff you can set that up all before you travel, and most people don't know about it, but it's called 1-800 TSA cares, and it's at the tsa.gov website as well.
What's the lead time on that? What do they require?
Another good question. I know they prefer 24 hours in advance, but I also know that day of, they will do what they can to help you. We recently had someone who is a wheelchair user, but he had this special halo on his head that was electronic or something. And they were worried about getting it through. And we only had about 10 hours advance notice on that, but it moved right through Washington, D.C. and down to the station, and it was a great experience. So the TSA's, we're willing there. You'd be surprised. There is accessibility is on their mind. And the TSA Cares program and the PSS program is a really true meat showing that they're doing something.
I say one thing about TSA and kind of a frustration and concern of mine over the years has been, you put your bag on the belt, you put your laptop in the crate, it all goes through, and then maybe 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, they get to you. In the meantime, your most valuable stuff is sitting 30, 40 feet away with all kinds of people trooping past it. And it's never happened, but how easy would it be for somebody just to grab that and off they go? And that's a really bad day.
We've had that happen. One of my employees, she was traveling in Jacksonville, put her laptop through, and the wheelchair service provider who was guiding her was not protecting her. And somebody stole her laptop and replaced it with a laptop that when she got on the airplane, it was filled with sand.
Oh my goodness.
It was just the shell of a laptop. There is lots. The good thing about TSA is that there's cameras. All of them have cameras now. So you can see a lot of that stuff is always on tape. So even if you feel like you were discriminated against, it's important to call that 800 TSA cares, because they can go back on the cameras and see it happening. And that's super helpful too, to have that ability to do it. But it is it's one of my pet peeves too, Mike, and I'm working on it. I'm trying to get it so that I do have it this. They are required to face you, so that you're facing your luggage and that you could have a somewhat unobstructed view unless it's in the path of travel. It might be obstructed a little bit then. So you can ask, everybody should know that you can ask to be facing your goods or the belt that where your luggage is on as it comes through the scanner. But it sits there and sits there and sits there, and it ends up down at the bottom. And my cane usually falls off the belt loader. It is not good. And the other thing I'm trying to get rid of is the call out. Male assist at the gate. But that I'm going to try and get that to be gone, because it's annoying, and we don't need to scream that out loud every time somebody in a wheelchair rolls up to the TSA line.
Actually, I've often called that out when they're kind of looking around, not sure what's going on. I'll just yell, male assist, and then they kind of perk up and, oh.
I've never tried that, but I might try that, because if I'm not getting help, they'll just say male assist at the gate. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mike, I have a feeling that your next flight is you're going to have a little bit different of a view after this conversation. After meeting Eric, you're going to probably see his work all over the airport, right?
I am. It's in a couple of weeks, so I'm eager to compare notes and dial back from maybe a year and a half ago with my prior last flight. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Honestly, yeah, I can't wait to hear about your next flight. You have to let me know, and if you have any complaints or compliments, then I want to know both.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being on the podcast. This has been a really enjoyable episode to record, and we'll hear more about your research. And Mike, we'll hear back from you about your new experience with flying after kind of looking behind the curtain a little bit.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for having this. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you bringing some attention to the grant.
This has been Inside the Outcomes, a rehabilitation research podcast. This podcast is supported by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. This is your host, Sharon Parmet, signing off.